Hello, everyone. Welcome to YouTube land. This may or may not look very different as a recording from last week's episode because we're trying it through a different program this week. So, apologies if maybe it looks way different. I'm not really sure how it will look. We will find out after we stop recording and this goes up. So we're trying it out. If it doesn't work visually, just listen to it like a podcast. Anyway, I think that's the way most of you will probably end up listening to it or engaging with it, I guess. But welcome to episode 2 of what did I call it? Complete Human Performance presents Sports with Kenny and Anthony, I think. Is that what I called it?
Yeah, or like CHP Sports or something.
Yeah, CHP Sports with Kenny and Anthony. I don't know. Some sort of
Yeah.
very generic title because I couldn't come up with anything else. So if you listen to the first episode, I know there were at least one or two of you that got views. I haven't checked the view count since last week. Sorry, I just got a text message from who texted me? My brothers and my father. So hopefully, if you enjoyed last week, let us know. We're still working it out, as you can see from the change setup. So Kenny, welcome aboard for week 2.
What's going on, my man? How was the weekend?
I think both of us kept forgetting it was Memorial Day. I never. So we're recording this on Memorial Day. This is how we're spending our afternoon.
Getting
Recording
crazy.
this. Yeah, I'll be honest. I tend to forget holidays because I'm sure you're in a similar situation where your every day is kind of the same. So
Yeah.
it's easy for
We were away for a couple of days, but supposed to have a softball tournament, and it just rained and just kept raining, and then it rained some more after that. So all of sports was canceled where I was. There was nothing happening. Big tournament too. It was like 90 teams, and they all showed up, and they're playing. They're actually playing like a one pitch. It's called a one pitch, where each batter just gets one pitch. It's either a strikeout or a walk or a hit, basically.
Oh wow, I
And
never even heard of that.
yeah, it's like a speed up rule. So because some teams hung out and stayed till today, so but we had we got out. I had my kids with me and everything. It was just it was time to go. We were sitting indoors basically for Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, just doing nothing because it was just pouring. There was nothing to do, so we got out. That was my weekend, and then now we're home today. So very
There you
excited.
go. Yeah, we didn't do much of anything. I think Saturday. I don't even know what I don't think I did. I don't think I left the house. I didn't. I don't think I left the house either day. Saturday, I think I just hung out and did a workout sort of midday. Well, it was pretty good. And then yesterday, Sunday, I watched the Indy 500, which we'll talk about here in a second, and just did some work most of the day. Then I watched the season finale of Mayor of Easttown on HBO Max, which was very good. If you guys if you haven't watched that show, it's a very good show.
I've
So
heard of it. I've heard it's good. I have not seen it though.
it's good if I find it maybe a bit depressing. So because
I've
I think
watched.
most of the characters are all very human,
Yeah,
which means they're all like hugely flawed. Which I personally, that's not why I watch a lot of TV. I want perfect people that look perfect. I don't want reality. I want it to be hyper reality. I
yeah,
want an escape from reality. That's the entire reason I'm watching something. And that's an artistic opinion, right? That's just why I escape. Um,
yeah.
but Mayor of Easttown, right? It shows you a lot of, shows that people, everyone's like 90, like 70% of the people in the show are liars, and some of them are lying for good reasons. Some of them are lying maybe not for good reasons, but right. It shows you that it sort of turns a very harsh light to that type of behavior in a very economically depressed area, small town where everyone knows each other. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I have personal fears of not ever wanting to be in that situation. So
Yeah. It's like my wife was watching that Handmaid's Tale. I'm like, this is the most depressing thing I've ever seen in my
oh
life.
yeah, I've heard it's very good, but I have
Yeah, I mean, it's
no
good,
desire
but
to
it's
watch it.
so sad. I'm like, I don't want to
Yeah,
watch this at all.
yeah,
It's so horrible. Like every situation is horrible. It's like the worst thing you can think of.
yeah,
Not my kind
yeah,
of show.
exactly.
Yeah, but
So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we segue into sports from here, but
Well, I watched the Indy 500,
yes.
so I would say, in terms of, I guess, sports moments from the last week or so, I think probably the biggest one would be the Indy 500. I mean, you wouldn't know that by going on ESPN's website right after the Indy 500 because they have to promote their what's on their own stations. So of course, it's Indy 500 gets a little byline on the right, and you know, it's Lakers versus Suns. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
you go to like NPR. NPR has the Indy 500 winner on the home, like as a big story on the homepage. It's like okay, ESPN.
I feel like it's like a more worldwide sport, almost like Indy 500 racing, Formula, you know, all that
Yeah, I
kind of
mean it's certainly
sport.
not Formula One, which I
Yeah.
watched, but there's no Formula One this week, so nothing to talk about
Yeah.
there. I mean, it's very different. They're two very different sports. That's something that took me probably like a year or two to really figure out watching the two, and they're very, very different. So they're not. To me, it's like comparing IndyCar to NASCAR, right? They're effectively two very different sports.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I just mean that like it's I don't know. I feel like it's more like I feel like, and I may be wrong, but NASCAR seems to be more of a United States draw, where like the Formula One racing, that kind of stuff. I feel like maybe more nationwide or worldwide. Excuse me. As far as like where the racers are from and stuff like that. Um, and I may be terribly wrong saying this, but I always felt like that kind of racing you'll see it in like other countries and stuff like that, whereas NASCAR is more like American,
yeah,
United States.
NASCAR. I can't think of any races NASCAR has outside of the United States. IndyCar will go to like Canada,
Okay,
maybe Mexico, but I don't think they really travel beyond there. Formula One will go all over the world,
all
right?
over.
So
Okay,
Formula One's like definitely by far the most worldly
worldwide.
sport.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Now I would say there's more crossover. Well, I don't know. Like F1 fans are F1 fans, and I would say people that are IndyCar fans will probably also be more willing to watch F1 and maybe NASCAR than maybe either like true like specifically people that identify as NASCAR fans would be to I watch either the other two, or F1 would be able to watch either the other two. But I
Gotcha.
will say like the drivers from IndyCar do are a bit more worldwide. They come from in more countries than like NASCAR. I think NASCAR is mostly United States.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'll be
That's
honest,
why I
I don't watch
always.
NASCAR really at all, so I can't.
Yeah, I barely ever watched that.
So
That's why.
apologies to
Same with
anybody.
like, yeah, like even like Formula One or the Indy race. You know, maybe IndyCar racing. You maybe I maybe see a few laps of the big race every year, right? The Indianapolis 500. And then Formula One, I feel like it's just man, it is like wild to watch to me. That's when they're going through like more streets and stuff like that. And
Yeah, they only really do circuits and street courses. There aren't any ovals, right? So
yeah,
IndyCar will do like a mix. Well, I would
okay,
say they do ovals. Let's just put it that way. They do ovals. NASCAR is almost all ovals with like one or
yeah, yeah,
two like circuits or street courses.
yeah,
IndyCar is a real mix. I would say it's more like circuits and street courses and just a couple ovals, but they're IndyCar's an oval, so
gotcha.
they do ovals. In Formula One, yeah, there's just at the heart these of each of those sports, what each sport is focused on and what the rule sets are very different, right? And the money going into them is very different, right? Formula One is just super rich,
Yeah,
right? There's just so much money that gets pumped into that sport that it's just a very different sport than IndyCar, which if you know the history of IndyCar, there's explanations for this. Like basically, IndyCar split in the early 2000s into two different um, groups, which was really stupid. Like if they would have stayed one group, they probably would have rival F1 now in terms of like global dominance. But they
gotcha.
split, and then like neither one really did that well because of like the drivers split and the team split like into these two different groups. So as the fandom got split, and then eventually now they're down to just one group. It's just now it's just back to IndyCar. Um, and now it's like a sort of spec racing series where it's like basically everyone has a very similar car. There's only two engine types. It's either the Honda or Chevy. The cars are pretty much the same. Whereas with F1, right, there's multiple different engine manufacturers. There's Mercedes, there's Honda through this year at least. There's Ferrari,
Okay,
and then there's some of the teams are buying engines from some of those manufacturers. And and there's so much with like the cars are all very different. they look pretty much the same, but like the arrow is very different on all of them, and so that affects performance. And the rich teams do better than the poor teams, whereas IndyCar, like everyone has kind of the same money, is my understanding. Uh, so very, very different. I know that the rules are changing in F1 to kind of make the money more equal between all the teams this like coming year, to create more parity, basically, which will be good from a fan perspective. But it is
Yeah,
changing the race.
we had another elder gentleman win this week.
Yeah, yeah, we
Brilliant.
did.
40, 40 said 46, right? 46 years old.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's 46 years old. Spider-Man won the Indy 500. It was a very exciting race if you got a chance to watch it. I am not the biggest fan of like oval racing. That's one of the reasons I don't like, probably the main reason I don't like NASCAR. But there's a lot of excitement in this Indy 500. There's a lot of passing, which is always exciting to see. There were two yellow flags, so there were like two wrecks, and like most importantly, no one was hurt, right? Like those, they're hitting 240 on the straightaways, so 240 miles an hour. The fact that you could have any wrecks and no one get hurt at all is amazing. And so the wrecks that happened affected the race, like it made it more interesting, but also I'm not somebody that you shouldn't be rooting for a wreck, right? Because
No,
you're rooting for a
especially I mean,
giant
there's
potential like injury or death to occur, right? So you
I
shouldn't
mean,
be watching
two,
racing for the wrecks.
240 miles an hour is just crazy.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
Yeah, and they get there
It's
so
ins-
fast. Like it's just like they come off the corner and it's like, oh, 240, bang, and
yeah, and it's like one of those things where when you watch the straightaway on at Indy, it's pretty wide, and you think like, oh, well, the car's going three across, it's pretty easy when you're just looking like at the width of a car and then like the straightaway width. Then you think, okay, like you do, like they have the in cockpit views, and you're like, holy crap, three cars abreast there at 240 miles an hour is insane. There's no way you could pay me enough money to go three cars, two cars wide. I'd be like, no, I want to be the only car on the track going down the straightaway
imagine
at
the
any sort of
draft.
speed.
Imagine the draft that creates,
Oh yeah,
right? And just the air they're dealing with, and I can't even imagine even a little pool one way. You know,
yeah, no, absolutely. And they talk about that during the race. And if you follow racing, you know how important drafting is to passing and all that good stuff. And then you saw quite a bit of that in the race, right? Helio didn't made his pass with 2 laps to go to take the lead, right? This is why it was so exciting, because him and Pelot were fighting down the stretch, and Helio made the pass with like 2 laps to go. Got a good run, used the draft, got by him, and Pelot just couldn't make it back up. Couldn't quite get a run on him in the last like lap and a half. So very, very exciting. It's cool to see, Helio becomes a 4-time winner with this. And, at the age he's at, I think this was the only race he was running this year. So he's, it's a team. Honda only sponsored this particular team for one race for this year. IndyCar's very strange in this regard, where teams only run like a couple races or even one race, like Indy, because it's such a big race. And, to just do it at his age is incredible, right? I know some
and
people might be like, well, it's not much of a sport. Well, let's put you in a car at 200 miles an hour going around a bank curve and see like how well your body holds up after 2 laps.
for that, yeah, for that many miles too.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to beat
Oh,
on you for
yeah,
the G forces, the mental strain of having to
and I,
you have to be mentally on it for 2 hours, right? 3 hours.
I believe I read that he hasn't raced competitively since last August. He hasn't even gotten in and raced, which is crazy too, to be that focused and razor sharp in a vehicle that fast for that long and then to win. And the guy that came in second's the younger guy. He's like the
Yeah, yeah. So it was really interesting. There's all these like young guns in IndyCar right now that
yeah.
are like between 19 and 21 years old, and they were all near some of them are right near the front, leading the race most of the race, to be honest. Um, so very, very, very exciting race. The future of IndyCar is very bright with all these young drivers that are
Young guys, yeah.
already performing at such a high level, and then you've got guys like Helio, and some of the older guys that are, I guess from our generation, I'll say, our age-ish about, that have been the old guard, and they're still very competitive, right? So you sort of have this wide swath of age ranges that are competitive, it just goes to I think that's only good for the sport, in terms of like bringing, because then you're able to capture new viewers,
Yeah,
younger viewers that maybe are excited about these new younger guys and don't care about like Helio Castroneves, whereas some of the guys are like Helio, like it's Spider-Man,
yeah.
and his celebration. I don't know if you got a chance to see any of his celebration afterwards. Like he was so pumped to have won, and it was
I
like
saw I
he's
saw a
like
couple
running up and down
pictures.
the track.
Yeah, he looked fired up. I saw some pictures. I didn't see the live footage, but
Yeah, it was crazy. Like he like climbed the, of course they climbed the fence, a very sacred tradition at Indy,
yeah,
climb fence, and how he's got his nickname. But then he's like running up and down the track, like cheering on the fans. And he's like for like 10 minutes,
that's
he
great.
was like super pumped. So very very cool to see. Very cool to see. Very happy for him and the team, his team. So well done to them.
Yeah.
Super exciting. Kenny, what else happened in sports this week?
Well, even as of yesterday, so the NBA playoffs got pretty. I don't want to say blown up, but Anthony Davis got hurt, and I feel like
Oh,
that's
did he?
huge. Yeah,
I missed that.
yeah. So he got hurt yesterday in the game, and early on, he might have played like 12 minutes or something, and they lost. Right, they were up 2-1 in the series, and a lot of trouble scoring without him on the floor, and yeah, now it's 2-2, and this is the so he got. I think he injured it in the game before, and it bothered it or aggravated it, and then played this game and hurt it again, and he didn't come back for this game. So not a good sign for someone that's that good and that important to that team, um, especially since their seed was so low. Right? It's not like they're playing a seventh or eighth seed; they are the seventh seed, and they're playing the Suns, who were great all year. So a
Yeah.
tough matchup, and then to lose him, I mean, that's like it's going to make it interesting. And I feel like all the Western series now are like 2-2, 2-1. You know, they're all close. Where the East kind of got blown open, and they're all blowouts
Yeah.
at this point. Yeah,
Yeah, pretty much everything's kind of gone the way you sort of expected last week from what your comments were, is that the West seemed a lot more competitive and wide open.
yeah,
And the East is pretty much, all right, it's these three or four
yeah.
teams that are
It's
going to,
more top heavy, I think, for sure. But
yeah. So let's see. Brooklyn, the Nets are up 3-1 against the Celtics. They won by 15 yesterday.
yeah, and that was
I'm trying to
like
think.
in the third, they were already up like 20 something. It was a
Yeah, the
blowout.
Hawks are up 3-1 against the Knicks.
That one surprised me actually.
Yeah, and then the 76ers are up 3-0 against
And
the Wizards.
Milwaukee already swept their series.
Yeah, Milwaukee swept.
which we
Yeah,
which
so
which we too thought might have been a little closer since the Heat actually knocked them out last year.
they
But
fell apart after the first game.
yeah,
Like all of a sudden they just, like the first game I think was close, and then it was just
yep,
domination by the Bucks the rest of the series.
yes. I
So
mean, but the West, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Most of them are, like I said, 2-2, 2-1, something like
yeah, I'm
that.
trying to look
Um,
here. Yeah, looks that way. Yeah, it should be interesting. This the Suns Lakers will be. I don't know how that series is going to go. I mean, because LeBron certainly doesn't seem 100% from before his ankle injury. Or it
yeah,
seems
and,
like he's still not there.
and it's a tough shift for him now because he's been more facilitating. Still scoring his 20, 25, but maybe 10, 12 assists, 8, 9 rebounds, and Anthony Davis will be 34, 35 points, right? But now he's going to have to kind of shift that mindset to more scoring, you know, and try to facilitate too. Because I mean, they do have some good other players, but I mean, Anthony Davis, all NBA type guy. It's a and again, they're playing the second seed in the playoffs. They're playing a good team, so it should be interesting. I think I don't think they win if Anthony Davis doesn't come back. We'll put it that way. I don't think they can. I don't think they have enough firepower, if you will. But you never know with LeBron though. He's talented. We know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think LeBron will have to put in some, vintage LeBron performances for them to win that series, based on
Yeah,
what I've seen, which isn't a ton, but
but does he
you know,
have enough in the tank? Is he like you said? Is he even 100% right now? And both of them just kind of started playing again, right? So
yeah,
just kind of getting their game legs back on. So it'll be interesting to see. Um, the Sixers have just kind of blown out. it's just been kind of a wash at this point. I thought that was going to be a little more competitive, and yeah, I mean Brooklyn's just really good. I can't. I mean,
Yeah, that's a series. If you would have asked me ahead of time, what series might be close in the East, I probably would have pointed to that one. Been like,
yeah,
well, Celtics have some good players. They're usually pretty consistently good.
they did win the
Usually,
one game. Tatum,
yeah,
he scored 50 points in the game and they won. He's
a
unbelievable.
fellow Duke Blue Devil like myself.
Yeah,
Um,
crazy is he
he's
should be on the
phenomenal.
Sixers. They didn't pick him that year.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Yeah,
But yeah,
he's
but it
on.
seems like he has to completely go off for them to really win
Yeah,
against
I mean
Brooklyn.
he's going to have to put up like Jordan type performances in the playoffs of 40, 50 a game for them to have a chance. I think Brooklyn's just. I mean, they
It's
have
Brooklyn.
they have like 4 All NBA players on their team. They're loaded. And they got the best
Yeah,
one of the
yes,
best three
Brooklyn
point.
should win.
Yeah, they have one of the best 3-point shooters on their team too. I mean, yeah, the team is crazy good. Too much scoring, too much talent. You
Yeah,
forgot
and
it.
it seems like they're finally healthy for the year.
Yes, that was the other thing all year. They were Kyrie was out, or Durant was playing, or vice versa, and then Harden was hurt, and
Yeah,
then they would.
Kyrie's. I mean, I hate when people like guys get offended by saying, "Oh, this guy's injury prone." Well, if you have a history of like being injured, you're injury prone. Like sometimes that's not. It's not a knock on you. It just means that the way you're put together, your body and your body structure, you just might just be easily injured.
Yeah, or just bad
It's not a
luck.
knock on like you don't do the work or put in the
Yeah,
effort to not be injured.
yeah.
And he just
It's
certainly seems like one of those guys that like you're going to get, if it's an 82 game season, you're probably going to get like 60 games, 50
yeah,
to 60 games.
yeah. And I
Yes.
mean, and I mean his skill set is right. It's off the charts, right? So
Yeah.
if you get 60 at that skill set, I mean, you're probably going to win a lot of games, especially when you're pairing him with the rest of their crew. And then you add in like a guy like Blake Griffith, later in the year. And they added what's his name, Lamarcus Aldridge, but he had to retire. He had some kind of, I think it was a heart condition or something.
Yeah. I want to say, I feel like I remember reading that story. It was a heart issue.
Yeah, really
First.
unfortunate. I mean, that's they added 2 basically all stars late in the season to an already really good team, and he had to call it quits, which is pretty crazy. But I know Kyrie too has had issues with anxiety and depression and stuff like that that he really struggles with a lot. I feel like times he could be misunderstood, and he seems disinterested at times and takes personal days and that kind of stuff. And he has come out and said like he deals with that kind of stuff. And it's tough to think about that. I think when you're like, hey man, you're one of the best basketball players on earth, and maybe from our perspective, we look like what could be so bad, but sometimes we don't have control over that kind of stuff.
Yeah. He's an interesting cat.
Yeah.
I think when he made the comments about the flat earth stuff, I don't know what he was thinking then.
Yeah. I don't know.
Right. So I'm just going to ignore those because
Yeah.
he, I feel like he makes very good points with a lot of what he says. Like when he, with the conflict between Israel and Hamas, in Palestine, when that was really right now. Obviously, there's a ceasefire, and hopefully that continues. And
Yeah.
we come to sort of resolution there. When that was, the bombings were happening a week or two ago. He was saying, "Hey, there's like basketball's not really the first thing first on my mind," and he's right. Right, they're playing some child's game probably shouldn't be the first thing on his mind. And I think so he's made a lot of points like that. He donated, I think, millions of dollars to the WNBA, for their salaries, I think last year with the pandemic, obviously. So he's been a big supporter of, women's activities, which I'm a big fan of. And he's donated money to a lot of good causes, and he's made a lot of good points. Again, I think a lot of that gets ignored because whenever you think of like stuff he said, you think of he said the Earth was flat, and you tend to ignore everything else he said,
Yeah.
or points he's made. But yeah, he tends to, I think, make a lot of good points. Some of them I don't necessarily agree with all of them. The Earth is not flat. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
But he certainly will at least ask some decent, good questions, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's, I think that's something that all of us need to think about. Everyone makes stupid comments, right? I mean, I've certainly made my fair share of stupid. Like if you go through my life, you roll back my life and like replay everything I said. There's stuff I'm going to listen back to and say, glad that wasn't recorded, right? I think we've all made very dumb statements, right? That we were probably very happy were not recorded.
yep. And
Um,
he'll say that too in interviews, like, well, not so much that, but he's like, sometimes he just doesn't feel like talking to the media. Sometimes he's just wants to go home after he plays. Like he's just, sometimes maybe it's just not in the cards that night. And I know, like, Marshawn Lynch went through all that, right? He just here so he didn't get fined, right? He just didn't feel like talking to anybody. He's here to play football, right? And a lot of times reporters will lead you with questions and try to get you to say something stupid, right? And it, or get under your skin, if you will, get a rise out of you. We've seen this forever with interviews with athletes, and it stinks sometimes that that's the goal of the interviewer, right? Is to try to get the person to say something out of character, if you will, or something that they might regret. But I don't know if you remember.
well,
Remember Jim Rome and Jim Everett? They almost got in a fight
oh yeah,
on.
didn't Jim ever like jump across the table and like tackle him
Yeah,
or something?
yeah, he was ready to beat him up on camera.
Like
So
knock him off the stage?
yeah, it's like stuff like that. Like it's been
Yeah.
going on for a long time. So I mean, it's like that shock journalism, right? That they're trying to get the big story or get the big reaction. So
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting the interaction between sports sportsmen and media is a very interesting interface because they both need one another, right?
yeah,
It's this codependent relationship where the media needs the sports people to say stuff, and the sports people in many ways need the media to help hype them up and give them good coverage, make them look good, say the right things about them so that they look in the community, they get a community support, maybe get a better contract, not get booed, at home or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, it's like if you every time you finished your job, someone came up to you with a microphone, it's like, all right, how did today go? How could you have done today better? They asked you like the same 3 or 4 questions every day, unless something went horribly wrong, in which case, like, so you really messed up today. How do you feel about that? Well, not good. I really don't feel like talking to you about how I messed up my job today. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I can see where if I was, an athlete, a professional athlete, how I would be very, there'd be days where I'd be like, I just don't want to talk to you folks. like, like I just fumbled with, the football with 1 minute to go when we were down by 3, and I was going into, I pulled an Ernest Biner, right? We know
yeah,
Ernest Biner, not for all the years he played as a dependable, reliable, running back for the Cleveland Browns. We know him because of the fumble, right? That's
correct.
how everyone knows that name, which is horrible for the guy. Like he had a very successful career outside of that one play.
Yeah, look at Bill Buckner, right? The
Yeah.
baseball player from
Yeah,
Boston. Yeah.
exactly. And so it's like
Imagine after the game being like, "Hey, how do you feel right now?" "Oh, I just
bad. I feel
blew it.
bad.
Yeah, yeah, I feel terrible. I don't want to talk to you." Uh,
Yeah. I've
so,
always enjoyed like people that gave like the most blunt answers. So my favorite's probably Greg Popovich. Right. Greg
yeah,
Popovich always gives great interviews because not only does he
very sarcastic too.
very, very sarcastic, but he's also tends to try to use the platform to do greater good. Right? He always tries to like shine light on like inequalities or something going on in the world that he feels needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
Steve Kerr is pretty good at it too.
yeah.
But it's like,
So,
why did you lose? Well, the other team scored more points than us.
yeah, that's Belichick too. It's very similar. He does the same stuff. He barely talks. Like, you know, we got to play
And
better.
he mumbles worse than I do,
Yeah,
which is
he
hilarious.
mumbles and he basically just says they were better than us and we need to play better and we're not that good. That's what he says the whole time.
Yeah, which it's is true. It's not like he's lying.
Yeah, he's not saying anything wrong. Nick Saban's pretty aggressively sarcastic too in his, and he'll always say they're not that good. They're like the best team in the country almost every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we need to work on this. They just won like 50-0. We got to work on it. But I mean, that's why they're where they're at, right?
Yeah.
That kind of mentality.
Well, in the same case, it's like you can't win, right? If you say if you're like Belichick or Saban, and you say like you can win the Super Bowl, and they interviewed in the Super Bowl, you're like, well, we won and we won by 4 touchdowns, but we missed a couple throws in the first half. So tomorrow we're gonna look at that on film, and I'm gonna bring the guys in
Yeah,
and talk about that. Like if you do that, people are like you're so anal and you're too focused on winning. But at the same time, if you're like don't want to answer the questions, you're like, oh yeah, we kicked their ass. They
Yeah,
stunk.
then
The other team
yeah,
stunk. They didn't deserve to be on the field with us. Not now. You've got too much of an ego. Like even though both things could be true,
yeah,
right? What you said here was all true, and what you said here was also true. Like so, no, I feel like you can never win, right? Or like there's some like very fine balance you have to walk where you're like, okay, how do I say this is, and this is why you get interviews where people say nothing by saying a lot, right? They're like, well, how'd you do? Well, we played pretty well in some areas, and we didn't play well in others. Like you just give that stock answer. So
yeah,
the other team, I want to give them credit. They put up to a good fight, whether they won or lost, right? The other team, well coached, their athletes played really hard today, right? Well, you can say that every week.
yep, absolutely. And then sometimes coaches will crack and be like, "We absolutely stink, and we need to work on everything, and the other team is better than us." And
We got out coached, we got
yeah,
outplayed.
yeah, they'll say I got out coached. It's on me, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's even a little easier as the coach versus the player that maybe did mess up, or that sit there and have to get peppered with questions like, "What were you thinking when this happened in the game?" You just want to get up and leave. You already feel bad enough.
When you dropped that fly ball, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
I was
Did
thinking, oh crap, I dropped the ball.
Did you see the first baseman from Pittsburgh that fielded the ball? There was a guy on third, and he ran. The guy running to first,
Oh, and he ran him all the way back. This
yeah,
was
he turned around and ran back.
and the guy ended up on second. The guy that like hit the ball.
Yeah, so then he threw it home to get the guy out running home, and
Yeah,
it was a bad throw, and then the guy ran to second. He overthrew second. It's a
yeah, it
mess.
was terrible.
Imagine getting interviewed after that. Like, hey, that was the most embarrassing play of your career on national television. How are you feeling about that, sir? Like, you feel terrible. Clearly, that's not what you wanted to happen, and it happens, and that's the beauty
It's
and
like
the
why didn't you just run and step on first base? Because
correct.
my brain shut off. I like
Yeah,
we've
well,
all
he
been
was.
there, right? We've all had moments where your brain just shuts off and you like don't do the obvious solution.
Yep, and he was like running in to field it, and he just kept running at the guy, and the guy turned around and ran the other way, which was kind of brilliant, right? Because it worked
Yeah,
out.
and then he throws it to home plate. It's like you understand he can't go back to home. Like
Yeah,
you can just run and tag him at that point. Like
yeah.
he can't has nowhere to go.
Like, oh man, but again, that's like the beauty and the horror of sports, right? And being at that platform, it's like you could do the greatest thing ever, or you could completely, have a brain fart, and here we are. The guy's on second, one scored, and no outs were got out of a
Yeah,
dribbler to first base. Uh, Baseball. That's just the way
baseball.
it is.
Yay.
And look, if I play softball, I've done plays like that, but nobody sees it. No one's recording it. I'm not getting interviewed afterwards. Like you just go home and you all laugh about it, right? It's not a big deal. But I mean, and I guess that too comes with the money, right? You're getting paid the big bucks. Comes with the pressure. Comes with all that kind of stuff. So I can't understand it on that side of it. Just do the salaries and all that kind of stuff. Like, but it's still they're still human beings, right? And that's why I think Kyrie says that a lot. Like, I'm just a human being. He just happens to be really good at basketball, and
Yeah. Yeah, and you forget it's like anyone that's played pickup basketball or pickup any sport. Think about like how important that game is to you. It's probably not like you want to win, but like after the game, you're probably nonplussed too much about whether or not you won or lost. Right? Some of these athletes, like if you're playing an NBA game in the middle of February, like who cares? Right?
yeah,
If you win or lose, really. Right? It doesn't matter. Right? That's why I'm always impressed by guys like LeBron. It's not so much that they can play at such a high level. I mean, it's ridiculous what they can do. But that like what does LeBron have to play for really? Right? He's won gold medals. He's won, MVPs. He's probably should have won the MVP like 4 other times when he didn't. Right? Like how many years has he been the best player in basketball? And everyone's like, yeah, he's the best player in basketball, and then he doesn't win the MVP. That's happened multiple times. And then he's obviously won championship a few times, like three times, I think.
I think four now.
Four, because the Lakers won
Last
that
year
year.
was
So he's got
four.
four
Yeah,
rings. It's like, what do you possibly like? If you're like not in the championship, like how could you be interested? Right? You're
yeah.
playing that November game. Like, how are you interested against like if you're playing some lowly team like out of the East?
And just being consistent.
Yeah, I
night in
mean
and night
it's
out. Yeah, and he's been pretty injury free. I mean, this year was this
this was
year,
the
and
first year. Yeah,
yeah, he had a something else. Was it 2 years ago when they weren't good at all? He got hurt. I forget what it was, but
it was a groin, I think,
yeah, groin. That's what it was. And then this year was
Achilles
the Achilles
or high
ankle
ankle
area,
sprain. I
high
think it
ankle. Yeah.
technically was.
Uh, so maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is a sign of like, hey, he's getting a little more beat up because he has had a pretty. I mean, the guy's built like a tank, right? He's had a strong body throughout most of his career. Which is in a sport like that, playing at that level for that long. You could see how it could wear somebody down. I mean, basketball is an extremely physical sport and puts you in very odd positions in the air that you can really mess up your legs coming down and your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, having broken my uh, fibula, I cracked my fibula when I was a
Yeah,
kid playing basketball.
just a lot
From
of.
exactly that, come down funny.
I remember playing and rolling my ankles on other people's feet, and just
Yeah,
like the
it's the
worst,
worst.
the worst, and had ankle pain for like 3 years after that. Like just doesn't go away.
I was
Um,
on crutches for my college graduation because of a basketball injury.
yeah, it,
I think I only played like 2 times my entire time I was in college, and once was during the break between finals and actual graduation. And I exactly what you said, came down, someone's ankle, rolled my ankle, foot turned almost black. I think finally
yeah.
went in, and I didn't break anything, but I think I tore up a bunch of stuff.
Mhm.
That's why my ankle doesn't quite bend right anymore.
Yeah, my senior year wrestling going into districts the week of, I was playing basketball with three of my friends and came down on my brother in law's foot. My ankle bone hit the ground. Like my foot was still on his foot. My ankle bone hit the ground. So yeah, that was my coach thought I was messing with him. I walked in with his crutches and an air cast, my wrestling coach. He's like, all right, dude, let's get to practice. I was like, no, like I really hurt my ankle. I'm out. I'm done. I'm done for districts. He's like, what are you thinking? We're just playing basketball. Why are you playing basketball during wrestling season? I was like, I don't know. We were just having fun and just one of them freak things, and I missed my senior year for districts. Um, Not much I could do about it though,
Yeah.
uh, injuries happen.
All right. So we mentioned anxiety,
Yeah.
sort of because Kyrie's talked about it. So that brings us to the last kind of story we want to talk about for this week's episode, and that is something that popped up literally right as we were about to start recording, and that is Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, has withdrawn from the French Open, or at least she's saying she will withdraw from the French Open. So obviously a very big name. She's won a major. I don't know what her ranking is. Let's see if this the world's number 2 ranked tennis player, right? So pulling out, she hasn't been talking to the media all year. And that's sort of like the crux of why the French Open was threatening to kick her out anyway, because she didn't talk to the media after her first round match, and she's decided she's just going to pull out. She has, according to this ESPN article I'm looking at, this is the quote they have in here from her. I think now the best thing for the tournament, other players, and my well-being is that I withdraw so that everyone can get back to focusing on the tennis going on in Paris. Never wanted to be a distraction. I accept that my timing was not ideal. The message could have been clearer. So
They
it
said
says
she got fined too.
yeah, she did get fined like 15 grand when she first stopped
Yeah.
talking to the media. She notes that she is not a natural public speaker and she gets huge waves of anxiety before speaking to the world's media. I get really nervous and I find it stressful to always try and engage and give the media the best answers I can. Right. So here we have an athlete, a major athlete, sort of at the peak of their particular sport, sort of noting the sort of mental health issues and stress and anxiety that goes along with not even playing the sport. It doesn't sound like she really has any. Doesn't seem like she has any issue playing the sport. She wins all the time. You don't become number 2 by not winning all the time. But
Yeah.
just speaking to the media, and she's someone that's been very outspoken on certain public issues. I know that has probably not maybe she's probably gotten some backlash from, because again, even if you're on the right side of history and the right side of social rights and other things, there are trolls out there that will bash you. And that I can understand getting anxiety about it, right? If I post something on social media,
Yeah.
like it sucks if someone says you stink, right? Like
Yeah.
like okay,
Well, and too, like you gotta. I look at her. I look at her age. Right. She's only 23 years old. Right. And then I'm thinking about, man, what would I have said when I was 23 years old? Like, I would be super worried about the things I was saying at that age. Like, she's young, and she
yeah,
her rise to fame, a couple of years ago. Just think she was probably 19, 20 years old when she was just starting to come in. And it says too, she's suffered from long bouts of depression since the U.S. Open in 2018. Um, so yeah, imagine just being that age and being kind of thrust into the spotlight. You're really good. You're winning, right? She's won multiple Grand Slams, and now you have to go in front of the press every single time, like we just said, like win or lose. You're going in front. You got to say the right things. If you say anything, people take it out of context. If you take any sort of stance, right, there's going to be opposition, right? No matter what you say. It's like a running joke with me and a friend of mine on Facebook. No matter what he posts, someone says the opposite, right? It's just like he could write like, "I like
people
warm
should be
weather."
allowed to breathe air. No, they
Yeah,
shouldn't.
no, they shouldn't. Yeah. So, but imagine it, and that's such a small magnitude, right? It's not really a big deal, but imagine being that kind of star with that kind of influence and that kind of following, and imagine the backlash you get from anything, really, just saying anything, and then the media can always construe what you're saying and take it out of context and pick out what they want it to sound like. And yeah, I mean, I get a little anxious thinking about it, and it's not even me, right? It's
Yeah,
just think about what that must feel like. Again, right after you perform, tennis is I feel like it's a high concentration sport. It's a long match, right? Um, a lot of, I mean, tennis is a dramatic sport in itself, right? There's a lot of drama in tennis matches and uh, long back and forths, volleys where they're just, it's a fun sport to watch, but very intense, very focused sport. And imagine kind of the emotional dump when you're done, right? Just kind of like you're trying to like calm back down, and then you got to go talk to the media, right? It's like, yeah, you could definitely say something that might not make sense, or maybe again taken out of context. And I could see how she would worry about that. And that's why I think maybe media stuff should be taking a look at that kind of stuff, like because some people do deal with anxiety issues that maybe aren't conducive to doing interviews. The second they're done playing.
yeah, yeah. No, certainly. Yeah, so I agree with everything you said. It's she's someone that's young. She's effectively the face of tennis right now, right? Like if you ask someone to name a tennis player, like who are they going to name? Like a female tennis player, they're going to say like Serena Williams probably, or Naomi Osaka, right?
Yeah,
It's those two. Um, so yeah, if you're someone, I think it's hard enough if you do not tend to struggle with mental health issues to post stuff on social media. Or it's like even when we post these videos, like I don't want to see comments that are like negative in the
yeah,
YouTube comments, right? Like I'm not gonna take that well. I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, like Joe Blow 57882, whatever your new username is, like his opinion really doesn't matter. That whatever.
yeah,
Um, it still sucks, right? Uh, so there's ways, obviously the internet makes it harder to like word things, you know, like try and it's hard. You can't convey tone, right? It's very difficult to convey tone, right? And so you have to use more words, and most people aren't going to use more words to try and convey tone. Because you can there's ways to ask a question that are, make it seem like, hey, I'm really questioning your ability, Kenny, versus, hey, I'm actually genuinely curious. Like, I actually don't know the answer to this question. I'm asking you because you seem like someone that might know. Do you have any insight into this? Right? There's, a question can kind of seem one of those two ways.
yeah.
Most of the time, I feel like on the internet it comes off as the former, where it seems very aggressive and like, you don't know what you're talking about. Can you answer this? Versus, hey, I'm super curious, like Kenny and Anthony, why, do you guys want, what are your thoughts on, XYZ?
Yeah.
Right. So,
No, and that's why I
yeah,
think it's good to talk, right? Because it takes the question out of it. Well, most of the time, but again, still media can kind of bend things and then write what you said and make it sound different. Right? I think when it's written in text, it can get messed up, or made to seem like it, or just a clip of it, right? They only play a clip
Yeah.
of your voice. It's really taking things out of context. But we've seen it before, and then you read the real story, and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't that bad. They were just commenting on this. Um, but yeah, I just think, think of a girl that age, just kind of almost, thinking college years, she would almost be just out of college, right? A couple of years
Yeah.
out of
She'd be like just
college.
graduated, like a year out.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think back to myself at that age. Like, I was just going out and partying at bars at that age, and couldn't imagine like having to do an interview. Hey, how was your night out tonight? Well, I had 37 beers, and I'm feeling pretty good. You know what I mean? But that's like, imagine having that pressure on you at that age. Just, that's, to me, it's tough. And we especially in tennis, right? Think of the superstars we've seen at young ages that have kind of cracked, right, or kind of lost it a little bit. Not lost it, but you know what I'm saying. Like, just very tough. What was her name? Was it Capriati? She was like 14, 15 when
I
she
won't
came in.
remember.
Yeah, I mean, she was very young. I think it was Capriati, but I might be saying her name wrong. But yeah, she was very popular, very young. I think Chris Evert was really young when she came in. So some very young stars in tennis, and a lot of pressure. It's kind of like the gymnasts, that deal with it in the Olympics that are, 16, 17 years old. The weight of their country on their shoulders, right? Just
Yeah.
so much pressure. So I think it's tough, and I don't think people realize how much pressure someone might feel from that, and anxiety, and that kind of stuff. I think it's really hard to understand if you're not in that situation. I think about, like, yeah, we played high school sports, and maybe there was 3,000 people there at a football game or something, right? Like, oh
Right.
my God, this is such a big pressure situation. But comparatively, I mean, I can't even imagine you're playing at the French Open or the Olympics, or and then trying to deal with that when you're done. Or maybe it was Jennifer Capriati. That was it. Pretty sure it just popped in my head. But yeah, just the age thing. I think it's a huge thing. It's tough enough at our age to deal with that kind of stuff, but imagine being like a year out of college, where most kids are still partying and only thinking about that kind of stuff. And this girl's winning Grand Slams and just being a phenomenal tennis player. And she has to do an interview, right? Has to. And she's honestly saying, like, "Hey, I just don't feel right doing this," and then she gets fined $15,000 for not
Yeah.
doing it.
I'm like super anxious about doing this interview. Like I don't
Yeah,
feel right. Yeah. Yeah. Anxiety is a real thing. So I did want to mention, since this episode will be published on YouTube on June 1st, 2021. The same day, we have an episode, our podcast is launching its normal monthly episode, and it's myself talking with actually my wife and Ariana Scalfo, another CHP coach, about anxiety and dealing with anxiety, because both of them have dealt with anxiety most of their lives. So it's worth a listen if you're someone that has either dealt with anxiety yourself or knows someone that has dealt with anxiety. It's probably worth a listen to hear their experiences and how they deal with it. Shouldn't say solutions, but coping methods they have used to good effect. So listen to that again. That should be out at the same time. When this comes out, that should already be out. So you can go there. I'll put a link in the description where you can find it.
I think that was one of our best topics too in the CHP men's group too that we did. Just a lot of good talk about it. It's good to talk about. It's good people are talking about it now because it was such a taboo type topic right back in the day. It
Yeah, it
wasn't
was for a
something.
long period of time. So yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like many more athletes, many more individuals, just in general, are more keen to just point it out. My wife talks about it in the podcast how she'll just tell coworkers, like, "Hey, I suffer from anxiety, or I have a history of anxiety and depression. So if I start feeling anxious, I'm going to tell you, so
yeah,
that like what's going on with me and why I might be behaving a little bit differently."
yeah.
So
Oh, that's great. And I remember, I think it was Kevin Love. He's been pretty open about it too in
yes,
the NBA, right? Yeah. And I know we said Kyrie's mentioned it, and now this big tennis star is mentioning it. Like, it's good that people are bringing this stuff up because I do think it's really important that people talk about this stuff. For sure.
there you go. Kenny, if people want to follow you, where could they follow you?
On the Instagram, I always have to look because I forget my handle. That's how That's how good I am at social media. It's just K Barber 39, K Barber 39, or at K Barber 39.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're officially taking clients through CHP now for training, right?
I don't have one yet, but yeah, we're set up to officially start. I actually took off this week in general from everything, so just like a
There
week
you
off,
go.
and then we'll be ready to roll with the clients. So pretty soon.
What type of client would be perfect for working with you?
I'll be doing mostly we'll call it CrossFit athletes or Olympic lifters, that kind of training, um, whatever you want to call it, functional fitness, whatever the name is. But yeah, mostly that kind of stuff and Olympic lifting stuff. Uh, that would be my strength or strong point, I think, mostly for training for sure.
Yeah, so if you are watching this, you're interested in getting some direction with that, and sort of, especially if you're interested in sort of incorporating into sort of a hybrid methodology, maybe we're trying to combine it with like a 5K, 10K, Kenny will be a good choice for someone to work with. So you can contact him or send me an email. You can follow me at Durazio Anthony. Email me, anthony.durazio at Complete Human Performance. You can follow CHP at Complete Human Performance on the Instagram. We're going to be more active there because basically I stopped running it. Ariana's running it. She's much better about running it than I am. So there you go. And yeah, I think that's it for this week's episode. We will see you. Trying to think what sports we have coming up this week. We got NBA, more NBA.
Or NBA,
I guess
yeah.
French Open going
I did
on.
watch a lot of Yeah, I watched a lot of softball again this weekend too. The women's softball World Series, college softball. It was pretty fun to watch. I like that. Yeah, we'll definitely keep our eyes out, right,
Yeah,
for
yeah. So
everything
I'm sure
going
there's
on.
stuff coming up. I think the track and field finals for NCAA are in 2 weeks, so that's coming up pretty soon. And then obviously, I think I want to say the Olympic trials, but the Olympics is a whole nother thing that I know we recorded
Yeah,
last week's, and like this week, it seems like everything really blew up. That starting
yeah,
to seem very, very, very doubtful. Numbers in Japan are really bad, and they're pushing very hard for it not to be there. So
not to be there, right?
it
Yeah,
might be the case for no Olympics, which would be completely understandable to be honest. So
and the NHL playoffs are in the second round now, I believe. So they're always. I like the NHL when it's like the Final Four. I
it's
enjoy it.
it's about when I start paying attention as well.
Yeah, yeah, fair.
If
And
not just the finals.
yeah, and like I love the going to the games. I think ice hockey is like the best, not the best, but one of the best in person sports. It's really fun
It's
to
a
watch.
lot better in person. It doesn't
Yeah,
really translate to TV that well.
no, I love it in person though. So yeah, I'll be checking in on that too. So yeah, some good stuff
Yeah, so
coming
lots of
up.
stuff going on this week. We'll be back next week to talk about all the major stuff. Obviously, here's we of course want the likes and subscriptions because YouTube algorithms, all that fun stuff, right?
Yeah,
So we'll see you guys all next week. Peace.
yeah.
Hang on.